You're still Julia Roberts. How have you finessed that?
First of all, it is the grace of others energetically that allows you to be how you want to represent yourself.
Things are going downhill for Julia Roberts. Danny, her husband, is seeking a divorce after being caught with another woman. Also about this time, she learned that her last name is an imposter. Her actual name is Julia Mitchell. Her physical health is also deteriorating due to the trauma she experienced as a result of her stepdad's violence. Friends claim she sobs often at 56 years old, and her children hardly ever speak to her. Neither Julia's shattered family nor her deteriorating health will improve no matter how much money she has. In the sleepy Atlanta neighborhood of Smyrna, Georgia, Julia Fiona Roberts came into this world on October 28, 1967. Her acting-loving parents, Betty Lou Bramus and Walter Grady Roberts, were her role models. In Decatur, Georgia, they had a modest acting school whose students included Yolanda King, daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. The King family paid for Julia's birth expenses as a gesture of gratitude. It was an act of generosity that linked her ancestors to the past in a manner that is hardly known. There was a lot of inventiveness and hardship in Julia's home. Although her parents had successful acting and writing careers, they were never wealthy. They split in 1971 when Julia was 4 years old, since their marriage was struggling financially. Although Julia's father remained involved after the divorce, Julia's mother was largely responsible for raising their 3 children alone. Betty Lou hoped to find stability and remarried in 1972. She regretted her decision and brought home an aggravating man instead. Michael Moz was violent and often jobless, making him the worst possible stepfather for Julia. He was nasty to the family, making their house a terrifying place to live. In retrospect, Eric, Julia's elder brother, claimed he was a weirdo and the source of all their misery. Moz has Julia's complete and utter disapproval, and Julia herself seldom discusses this period of her history. She subsequently came to terms with the fact that her mother's marriage to him was her worst life choice. By the time she ultimately ended their 11-year marriage in 1983, the harm had already been done. In 1977, at the tender age of 10, Julia experienced the tragic death of her father, Walter, who passed away from throat cancer at the young age of 44, all while coping with Moz at home. A void that was never truly filled in her life was created by his passing. Walter, in addition to being a doting father, was also a gifted dramatist who inspired her. Because she lost him while she was so young, she had to mature quickly. At a young age, she discovered that life might be unjust, but she also discovered the power of perseverance. Going to school also didn't help much. Julia frequently became the object of vicious taunting, rather than a source of solace among her friends. Her classmates would tease her about her signature big smile. They made fun of her by calling her Toothy, a contemptuous moniker. She became more resilient as a result of the bullying, which hurt. Years later, she spoke out against bullying and supported kindness initiatives, drawing on those terrible memories to assist others. Boldly deciding to follow her ambition of becoming an actor, 18-year-old Julia Roberts relocated to New York City in 1985. Beginnings were not easy. She joined the Click modeling agency in the hopes of getting some attention, but the industry didn't give her the break she needed. She had a hard time making ends meet since jobs were few. She took acting school to hone her craft while doing odd jobs to make ends meet. She made her television acting debut in a minor part on Crime Story in 1986. She didn't become famous from that one program, but it was her break. There was no simple path in, and she had no family ties in Hollywood, but she persisted nevertheless. Despite the constant barrage of criticism, she persisted. In 1987, she made her cinematic debut in the film Firehouse. It wasn't revolutionary or anything particularly noteworthy, but it was nevertheless progress. Then, in 1988, she went in for an audition for the romantic comedy drama Mystic Pizza, which was set in a Connecticut pizza parlor and centered around 3 young ladies. She portrayed the self-assured and defiant teen Daisy Araujo. While the film bombed at the box office, reviewers gushed over it. A stunning beauty with tremendous intensity, Roberts was hailed by Roger Ebert, who foretold her stardom. It was as he had warned. While everything was going on, Roberts was still working in New York as a sales clerk for Ann Taylor. Hollywood casting directors took notice of her after she had been selling clothing for a while. Even though Mystic Pizza made her famous, she had much to prove. Her life took a dramatic turn in 1989 when she earned a role. Sally Field, Dolly Parton, Olympia Dukakis, and Shirley Manson were all formidable actors in the dramatic film Steel Magnolias. Played by Roberts was Shelby, a young diabetic newlywed. Real vulnerability was essential for the part, which was highly emotional. A previous cast member, Meg Ryan, had departed to star in When Harry Met Sally, so she wasn't even the first pick. Roberts walked in, determined to show her worth. The show was difficult to put on. Herbert Ross, the film's director, was quite critical of Roberts, finding fault with her performance, her appearance, and her weight. She overcame the challenge, and her performance left an indelible impression. Despite spending only $15 million, the picture earned $68 million. Roberts was nominated for her first Academy Award and went on to win the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. At the tender age of 22, Julia Roberts stepped into the role that would alter the course of her life. The romantic comedy Pretty Woman, in which she featured in 1990, was an enormous success. The film followed escort Vivian Ward as she fell in love while working for a rich businessman for a week. The dapper businessman Edward Lewis, portrayed by Richard Gere, was caught off guard when he fell for her. Their chemistry was palpable, and viewers couldn't tear themselves away from them. However, the film's current form nearly didn't materialize. Pretty Woman was originally titled 3000, a dark drama. The plot was darker and more tragic, with Edward abandoning Vivian after hurling money at her. Everything was altered after Disney assumed control. The modern fairy tale rewrite that included a happy ending was the deciding factor in the script's success. Although the film's $14 million budget meant that audiences weren't expecting much, it was a smashing success upon its March 23, 1990 release. It surpassed the 2002 romantic comedy My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which had already achieved record-breaking box office success, with a total of $463 million and 42 million tickets sold in the United States alone. Julia Roberts became a household celebrity overnight because to the unprecedented success of the film. She was nominated for an Oscar and won a Golden Globe for her performance in the comedy musical. She had become the new American sweetheart of Hollywood. However, securing the part was no picnic. Roberts had to go through the audition process again after being cast when the previous production company went bankrupt. Director Gary Marshall advocated for her, but Disney was first unconvinced. It was the correct call. Her chemistry with Gere was what made the film so memorable. Not even the filmmakers had anticipated some of the film's most memorable scenes. Roberts couldn't help but break into laughing when Gere abruptly closed the jewelry box during the scene where Edward presents Vivian with a diamond necklace. It was that genuine emotion that Marshall chose to retain in the finished product. There were obstacles throughout filming. At one point when filming the love sequences with Gere, Roberts came out in hives from anxiety. To make matters worse, Marshall joined them in bed so she could finally unwind. There were issues with the now iconic bubble bath sequence. The crew had to restore Roberts's hair late at night since the bubble detergent had removed it of its dye. We also had to deal with casting. Even Gere was on the fence about participating until Roberts persuaded him to accept it, and that was before a number of well-known women declined the part. It took her sliding a note that said, "Please say yes," into his meeting agenda to finally get him to agree. Roberts was preoccupied with another project when the picture opened, so she was unaware of its enormous popularity at the time. Pretty Woman made $1 million on its first weekend, which was a large sum at the time. Adjusted for today, that's roughly $21 million, which she learned about later on. Long after the fact, in 2024, Disney would still consider it their highest-grossing R-rated film. Roberts rose to prominence as one of Hollywood's highest-grossing performers following Pretty Woman. Over the course of the 1990s, she was the star of a string of successful films, such as Notting Hill, 1999, and My Best Friend's Wedding, 1997. But she achieved a historically significant feat in the year 2000. She broke the $20 million film earnings barrier, becoming the first actress to do so. You saw Erin Brockovich in that film. Hollywood women made far less than top male performers like Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise, who were earning $20 million per picture at the time. That was altered by Roberts. Her portrayal of campaigner Erin Brockovich, who actually existed, was among her most memorable performances. The film proved that a female-led picture could be as profitable as any blockbuster, earning $256 million worldwide on a budget of $52 million. She broke new wage records in Hollywood after winning her first Oscar for Best Actress. Roberts stated afterwards that she simply wanted a fair wage and never viewed the discussion as a struggle for equality. I didn't feel so boxed in about it, but I felt like, let's get real, let's be fair. Her performance in Pretty Woman paved the way for other actresses to seek more salaries in the future. The film catapulted Julia Roberts to stardom, and it remains a timeless masterpiece even after all these years. Thanks to its iconic red dress, memorable romance, and hilariously heartfelt plot, it became a global sensation. An ominous, low-budget picture with a shaky start become a cinematic classic. A career for Julia Roberts has been full of unexpected highs and lows, but always memorable performances. Beginning her career as a fresh-faced novice, she went on to become one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, shattering records for both salary and Oscar wins. She abandoned the romantic comedies that had made her famous for a daring leap of faith with 1991's psychological thriller Sleeping with the Enemy. In the role, she portrayed Laura Burney, a lady who, in order to get away from her violent husband, pretends to die. Audiences couldn't get enough of the film despite divided reviews. Despite spending less than $20 million, it made $175 million globally. Roberts demonstrated she could carry a suspenseful film and earn enormous sums at the box office with that type of success. She wasn't limited to rom-coms. Dying Young, a romantic comedy about a woman's crush on a guy with terminal illness, was released that same year and starring her. Although it had all the makings of a heartbreaking film, reviewers panned it for being too emotional and predictable. It wasn't a smashing success, but it also failed to strike a chord like Sleeping with the Enemy. Steven Spielberg's Hook, a retelling of the Peter Pan tale, followed. Roberts should have been over the moon to portray Tinker Bell. Despite the film's $300 million global gross, production was anything from magical. Story went about that Roberts was having a hard time on set. Some of the crew even started calling her Tinker Hell. Spielberg eventually came clean about their collaboration issues, but he put the blame on Roberts's personal problems at the time. In reality, the film's production took far longer than anticipated, clocking in at 116 days instead of the originally planned 76. Ultimately, the price tag jumped from $48 million to more than $80 million. Spielberg and Roberts never collaborated again. Her 1997 romantic comedy, My Best Friend's Wedding, which turned the formula on its head, propelled her back to the top. Instead of portraying the ideal romantic partner, Roberts portrayed Julianne Potter, a lady who discovers her feelings for her best friend a few days prior to his wedding. The picture grossed $299 million worldwide, making it a massive hit. Both critics and viewers praised the film for its innovative approach on love, and the score became as famous, with the song I Say a Little Prayer becoming a cultural touchstone. Roberts was nominated for a Golden Globe, and the picture cemented her position as the romantic comedy queen. Then Erin Brockovich came along and altered everything. It was more than a smash in 2000. It marked a turning point in her career. A single mother named Erin Brockovich helped reveal a huge corporate cover-up in this film based on a true event. Roberts gave an electrifying performance, and the film earned $256 million globally. In addition to her many accolades, including a Golden Globe, a SAG, and an Oscar, she was named Best Actress at the ceremony. This marked a watershed moment in my career. It was historic. Her $20 million payday made her the first actress to do so for a single picture. She became unstoppable after that. In Ocean's 11, she made $10 million, and in Mona Lisa's Smile, she broke records with a $25 million earnings. Worldwide, her films had already earned more than $3.9 billion at that point. Studios were confident in her ability to make any picture a financial success, since audiences adored her. Even more impressively, 54% of Americans said they would watch any show in which she had a role. Unfortunately, there was some controversy around her Oscar win, since in her heartfelt acceptance speech, she omitted to recognize the actual Erin Brockovich. Backstage, she swiftly made apologies, but the incident went viral. She nevertheless managed to provide one of the most lauded performances in Oscar history, despite that minor slip-up. The romantic relationships of Julia Roberts have been as eventful as her on-screen personas. She was a major rising star in Hollywood in the 80s and 90s, when news of her romances was all over the news. Her relationship with Kiefer Sutherland was one of the most surprising and intense. In 1990, while shooting Flatliners, she met Sutherland. They were engaged within a few months of their first encounter. The ceremony was scheduled on June 14, 1991, at Los Angeles' 20th Century Fox soundstage. The media was prepared to cover what seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale, and the invitee list included around 150 people. However, chaos ensued in the final 3 days leading up to the event. Sutherland was taken aback when Roberts suddenly canceled the wedding. His alleged infidelity with stripper Amanda Rice quickly circulated. He then apologized, saying he had labeled Roberts an insecure ice princess, a comment that had a greater impact. What really caught everyone off guard, though, was Roberts' decision to not only postpone the wedding, but also to depart the nation on the day of her alleged nuptials. Jason Patrick, who is Sutherland's best buddy, and she were both seen in Ireland. The treachery by Patrick crushed Sutherland's heart even further. In retrospect, he realized how unpleasant the entire ordeal had been and referred to his ex-friend as a snake. Years later, though, he saw things differently. He commended Roberts for seeing that they were too young to tie the knot and acknowledged that the scrutiny of their relationship had been too much for them. Among the most high-profile splits in Hollywood that decade was that controversy. Just 2 years after that, on June 27, 1993, Roberts startled everyone once again. She wed country artist Lyle Lovett after just 3 weeks of dating. She was a stunning movie actress, and he was a musician from Texas, so their romance appeared implausible. However, they hit it off. They tied the knot in a little Marion, Indiana church, and the ceremony was as surprising as their courtship. All it took was 72 hours to plan it. The very next night after a concert, Lovett announced Roberts as his wife following the marriage. Their demeanor first suggested joy. They were mutually supportive of one another's careers, and Lovett frequently performed songs dedicated to her. The harshness of their routines, however, became apparent very fast. Lovett spent extended periods of time traveling, and Roberts was never off camera. Their marriage suffered as a result of the little time they spent together. Even more aggravating was the allegation that Roberts had developed feelings for actor Ethan Hawke around this period. After only 21 months of marriage, in March 1995, they made the announcement that they were divorcing. Their occupations had prevented them from doing anything, and that was the only drama. Roberts subsequently said that she had no regrets, and that their breakup was really amicable. Lovett was very much in agreement, stating that he held her in high regard. There would be more drama around Roberts' next romance than any in the past, even if her breakups before were not scandalous. Meeting cinematographer Daniel Mott on set of The Mexican ended Roberts' relationship with actor Benjamin Bratt, which had lasted 4 years by the year 2000. Although they hit it off right away, Mott had a marital problem. He was still seeing makeup artist Vera Steinberg, and the divorce was a messy affair. There was friction between the parties, since Steinberg delayed signing the divorce papers for more than a year. Frustrated by the delays, Roberts took a risk. The words "Aloe Vera" were printed over her handmade t-shirt, sending a clear message to Steinberg. Many in the media slammed Roberts for being callous when the act went viral. After what seemed like an eternity and a $200,000 settlement, Steinberg eventually consented to a divorce. Without wasting any time, Mott and Roberts were secretly married at her property in Taos, New Mexico, on July 4, 2002, after he was legally free. Under the starry sky, Roberts and Mott exchanged vows at midnight, a secret that not even their guests knew about. Their marriage, which started out on a dramatic note, has endured for nearly 20 years. In 2004, they had twins, Hazel and Phineas, and in 2007, they had a boy, Henry. She has kept this connection under wraps, in contrast to her previous ones. Roberts has consistently denied any marital issues, citing her marriage as the finest choice she has ever made, despite rumors to the contrary. As a child, Julia Roberts thought she was a Roberts, but a surprising revelation changed her life. She discovered that her lifelong given name, Julia Mitchell, wasn't truly hers by blood when appearing on PBS's Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates, Jr. John Pendleton Roberts, her great-grandfather, was the first target of the inquiry. A discrepancy was discovered when researchers examined historic Douglas County, Georgia census records and discovered that John's father was recorded as Willis Roberts. Since John couldn't have been born until 1878 and Willis passed away in 1864, it can't be that Willis was John's biological father. Julia and her first cousin both submitted DNA samples for testing in an effort to find out the truth. Henry McDonald Mitchell, Jr., an entirely new individual, was born as a consequence. Rosa Roberts, Julia's great-great-grandmother, lived only a few miles away when he was alive. Henry, not Willis, was John's biological father, and the link between the two was obvious. However, an additional twist emerged. Sarah, Henry's wife, was already a mother of 6. They often crossed paths since his mother, who had recently died, lived only 4 houses away from Rosa. For years, their connection had remained hidden, swallowed up by the passage of time and the tragedies they had endured. Dr. Gates surprised Julia when he told her this. She inquired, "So we're Mitchells? Are you saying that I am Julia Mitchell?" The revelation altered the course of her family history. She accepted and joked about it despite the shock. Though she was astounded, she maintained a bond with the Roberts surname as it was the only one she had ever known. She also had a new perspective on her great-great-grandmother after this revelation. Rosa was a widow for a long time after her husband, Willis Roberts, perished in the Civil War. They had been married in the 1850s. Next, a boy was born to her in 1878. Nobody ever doubted it, and there was no birth certificate to clarify what had transpired. Hook, Steven Spielberg's 1991 fantasy picture, starred Julia Roberts at the height of her career. Roberts played Tinker Bell. She was incredibly fortunate to have access to a massive budget, an A-list cast, and the services of a well-acclaimed Hollywood director. However, behind the scenes, things were not going according to plan. At barely 23 years old, Roberts was already coping with the fallout of a scandalous engagement to Kiefer Sutherland. Allegations of infidelity abound in the media, affecting both parties. She continued to be the center of attention even on the Hook set, where she quickly earned the nickname Tinker Hell from her co-workers for allegedly being a chronic latecomer, a chronic problem worker, and someone who spent too much time in her trailer. Spielberg allegedly became irritated since he is famous for maintaining a tight set. With a budget already over $70 million, recasting her would have been a costly move, yet it was considered. Delays associated with Roberts contributed to the overall length of the filming. which increased from 76 to 116 days. Additional factors that contributed to the long timetable included Dustin Hoffman's rigorous method acting and prohibitions on underage labor. The encounter became much more challenging because of Roberts' participation. Her time spent performing in front of a green screen was far more than that of the majority of the ensemble. Spielberg was the only one she could communicate with, and their already tense relationship became even more so. Spielberg subsequently referred to it as an unhappy moment, which Roberts interpreted as an act of personal betrayal. Rather of standing up to the rumors, he left her feeling abandoned. She stated that it was a difficult lesson and accused him of being a traitor in interviews. Still, Hook managed to make a tidy sum at the box office. Although the picture was well received by critics and viewers alike, the underlying animosity between Spielberg and Roberts remained a sour note throughout its $300 million-plus global revenue. They haven't collaborated since. Things changed drastically for Roberts a number of years down the road. She became a Hindu in 2009 while shooting the film Eat, Pray, Love in India. Something about Hindu philosophy sparked for her while she was filming at an ashram near Haridwar. Despite never having seen the Hindu guru Neem Karoli Baba, she was profoundly affected by seeing his portrait, she stated afterwards. Roberts made his conversion to Hinduism public in 2010. This was more than a fad. Along with her husband, cinematographer Daniel Mott, she began taking their children to temples. It was fundamental to their life that they chanted and prayed together. Her work reflected her deep devotion to Hinduism. Her production firm was titled Red Om Films, a nod to the sacred sound Om. She spoke highly of Hindu celebrations such as Diwali and contemplated purchasing real estate in India, particularly in sacred towns like Haridwar or Varanasi. After all these years in the industry, Julia Roberts has been going strong. Her ability to shock and delight audiences is endless. Wonder, a film she appeared in 2017, won over audiences all over the globe. According to R.J. Augie Pullman, a young boy with Treacher-Collins syndrome, has a hard time fitting in at school in this best-selling novel by R.R. Palacio. His unwavering supporter and mother, Isabel, played by Roberts, is there for him through thick and thin. Her performance was praised by critics as touching and heartfelt. Making $35.9 million globally on a $20 million budget, the picture was an enormous success. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 88% approval from reviewers and 86% from viewers. This proved to Roberts that her mere presence could still attract audiences to the theater. She made a triumphant comeback to the romantic comedy genre in 2022 with Ticket to Paradise. Ol Parker, who had previously directed Mamma Mia, was the film's director. It brought her back together with George Clooney. Once again, here we go. In order to prevent their daughter from being married too young, a divorced couple band together in the novel. Full of the chemistry that made Clooney and Roberts such a fantastic pair, it was entertaining and carefree. Ticket to Paradise was an unexpected success during an era when romantic comedies were failing to do well at the box office. It demonstrated that Roberts still had that something unique to offer viewers and made about $170 million globally. Her ability to influence a production from beginning to end was on full display in this picture, in which she not only starred, but also served as producer. But Roberts has done more than feature in romantic comedies. Her roles have always been demanding and dramatic. The 2013 dark family drama, August, Osage County, which was adapted from Tracy Letts's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, has her as the lead. She had a tremendous on-screen struggle with Meryl Streep as Barbara Weston, a woman attempting to keep her family together while dealing with her manipulative and nasty mother. Prior to its December 2013 global release, the film had its world debut at the Toronto International Film Festival. The reviews were varied but mostly favorable, and Roberts' performance was the highlight. This was her fourth Oscar nomination, and Vanity Fair praised the performance as searing and unrelenting. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for the part. Despite having a $25 million budget, the picture managed to earn $74 million worldwide. It was nominated for 67 awards and won 16. Roberts has also taken to using non-traditional narrative techniques. Sam Esmail, Mr. Robot, directed the 2018 Amazon Prime thriller Homecoming, in which she makes her television debut. She portrayed Heidi Bergman, a caseworker at an enigmatic institution meant to assist returning service members in reintegrating into civilian life. But as the plot develops, Heidi begins to suspect something is off. Both her time in the facility and her time spent trying to piece together what occurred are explored in the show. Tense, psychological, and full of surprising turns, Homecoming was Roberts' most original work to date. Her performance was hailed by critics as one of her best in recent memory. She brought her character Heidi's bewilderment and terror to life with a subtle intensity. A nomination for Best Actress in a Television Series Drama from the Golden Globes was extended to her for that performance. Roberts demonstrated her influence on the projects she worked on as a lead and executive producer.